I didn't think it would come to this, but I'm starting to think that walking away might be the only way to save myself. This is my story.
Previously in part 6.
Who's there with you? Clara, do you really think pulling some stunt like this will get a reaction out of me? Tell that man to get out of my house. Right now. Don't think I'll tolerate having some random guy around.
I could not listen anymore, so I told him I was in the hospital because I was not feeling well. There was a brief pause, which was followed by Ashton laughing bitterly.
I see what's going on. You're so childish. Ruby gets pregnant, so now you're faking a stomachache to get my attention, huh? Let me guess. You're going to tell me you're pregnant too? What a joke. I've never seen anything more pathetic or disgusting.
I gripped my phone tightly, repeating to myself not to get angry over and over again. More importantly, I could not afford to get upset because my baby could not handle the stress right now. Ashton, I'm not trying to force you to come back. I hope you and Ruby are having a great time. I have people looking after me here, and honestly, things are going just fine without you. It's actually a lot easier. It was the first time I hung up on Ashton before he could finish. Almost immediately, a flurry of angry messages came flooding in. Predictably, it was all about how unreasonable I was and making him upset for no reason. He warned me not to regret it and not to come running back to him crying and begging for forgiveness. I simply tossed my phone aside, picked up my food, and ate it. There are moments when I look at him and I don't even recognize the man I married. 2 days later, the doctor told me everything had stabilized, and I was cleared to leave the hospital. Will came to pick me up. I told him it was too much trouble and that I could just call a cab, but he just laughed and said it was no big deal. It was what neighbors were for. His kindness hit with a pang of sadness. Ashton rarely ever drove me anywhere. However, if Ruby called, no matter how far she was, he would pick her up.
You have a car, don't you? Why don't you drive yourself? Ruby doesn't have a license, so of course I have to go and pick her up. What if something happens to her while she's taking a cab? Are you going to take responsibility for that?
That was what Ashton had thrown back at me the last time I asked him for a ride. I had just opened the car door to get into the passenger seat when I felt a strong hand yank me back. Startled, I turned to see Ashton standing behind me, his face dark and angry. "What are you doing here?" I asked, confused. I had not heard from him for 2 days. Did Ashton actually care enough to come to the hospital to pick me up the moment he returned? Then, his eyes flicked over to Will, and his voice was full of anger. The more I hold on, the more I feel like I'm slipping away from myself.
You've got some nerve! I came home and the whole table was covered in rotten, mouldy food. What's the matter with you, huh? Other housewives could at least manage to keep the house in order and raise their kids. You can't even have a child, and now you can't even take care of the house?
His accusations shattered the last bit of hope I had left. I pulled my arm from his grip, my voice turning cold. I told you I was in the hospital, didn't I? Yet you showed no concern for your wife, a sick person, just complaints that I didn't clean the house? Ashton looked me up and down, his eyes filled with suspicion.
You look perfectly fine to me. Quit pretending.
The only reason I looked better was because Will had been visiting every day, bringing me food to help me recover. Hearing Ashton's comment, Will stepped out of the car, ready to speak up for me.
Find out what happens next in When It All Fell Apart, only on the Good Novel app. Search the book title or the book code 298391 to get right into it. See you on the other side.